Hello, everybody. Everybody, hello. Welcome to tonight's midweek fleecing, I think we've called it.
Midweek fleecing.
A midweek fleecing. It was fleeced viciously across the cobbles. First person to get that.
Featuring Earth and Wind at the moment, apparently.
Yeah, only Earth and Wind. Fire has yet to join us, but he will be. Mr. Pollard will be along a bit late. He has some other things to attend to. So he will be joining us. But in the meantime, we're going to wing it. So hello, everybody. I hope you're all keeping well this evening.
Oh, let me just switch comments on so we can see the comments.
Yeah, let's see the comments. They're controversial at the moment. Dave is saying morning. Tony McKee is saying evening. And Andy Brennan is saying good evening all. Well, I think we'll have less of that. Thank you very much.
And thus ended another day.
And that's ended another day indeed. So, what have you been working on this week, Mr. Manton, sir?
Well, it's still the Mirage, isn't it? Clearly, as anybody who's looking at my modelling page will realise, the Mirage is slowly creeping along.
This is the Models Fit kit, isn't it?
This is the Models Fit.
Yeah,
the retool. No, Dave, no. Try again. And it's everything I said of Models Fit these days. It's just absolutely superb, and is a really fun build. That's the thing. Although it's limited run. That picture there is when I'd glossed it and the decals were going on. And since then, it's had another coat of gloss to seal the decals in, and then some polishing with the Trizact, the 3000 grit Trizact, and then an initial coat of flat, which is, you can see there with the flat coat on top. So that's where we are at the moment. If you cut back to my camera a second, I'll show you where we are just this very second. I don't know if you can see, but I've actually started weathering the undersides with some streaks and stuff on the tanks and all that sort of thing now.
How much of the markings did you paint and how much did you mask?
This is all decals.
Ooh.
I didn't cut. I say I didn't cut any masks. I made some masks, or I masked off, I should say, but only the aerials and obviously things like I made some roundel masks just to mask off the area where the roundel would go.
Yeah.
Not to use them to spray the roundels, just so there's a consistent paint behind the white of the roundel.
And what paint was that?
This has been all Mister-Colour. In fact, all the camouflage at this point is 100% Mister-Colour. All the camouflage colours are Mister-Colour. The yellow is Mister-Colour. And the gloss varnish I used was GX 112, their gloss, and it's had a coat of the GX 113 flat over the top of it. And the GX 113, I actually used the rapid thinner to thin.
Right.
And as we were discussing last week, how the rapid thinner helps metallics. Because it doesn't allow the grain to settle. It flashes off so fast that the grain doesn't settle, so you get that kind of bright, it retains the bright metallic finish. I'm noticing with the using it to thin the flat varnish, the matte varnish, I've never liked using lacquer flats because it never seems, they're so thin that decals and stuff still show through them. But in this instance, it seems to be holding the flat agent in the varnish and flashing off so quickly that you're getting a really, really nice, super smooth kind of flat finish, and you can't actually see the decals either.
No,
you can't see the decal surround or anything on it. So I'm really, really impressed with the way the rapid thinner has helped a lacquer varnish go down.
Ian Hartup says, tell us more about the Trizact.
Well, there's very little to say, really, Ian. It's Jen, evening Jen. I see Jennifer's in the room, and it's just a car polishing disc that you cut up into sections and use wet. What are you doing, John?
I am just trying to get my Trizact out, if you pardon the expression.
Oh, hey, and yeah, it allows you to polish polish finishes back really, really nicely before moving on with painting. But honestly, and I don't know, when you say tell us about Trizact, it's one of those things. It's a really fine abrasive that works really well, specifically for paints, and I commend it to the house. If you don't have any, get some.
Where did you get yours from?
Oh, eBay.
eBay.
I just put Trizact into eBay, and it comes back with a multitude of hits. So you can just order it from eBay, and a few days later it'll turn up. So I couldn't actually tell you where I ordered it from.
No, eBay's fine.
Other than eBay.
Well, that's annoying. It's been sat in the drawer here for the last couple of weeks, and now that I've actually gone to grab it, it has absolutely vanished off the face of the earth. It'll probably reappear again, but it comes in.
John, stop it! Don't worry about it.
I know. Oh, that's really annoying. It comes in just like a large disc, because I think it is supposed to be fitted to rotary sanders.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's supposed to be fitted to a rotary sander and used to polish out refinishing jobs and stuff. But like I say, Jen's the expert. I've just followed her advice and bought some and used it, and I've been using it ever since.
And what size grit is that again?
I think it's about 3,000 grit, the stuff I use, but it's not like micro mesh. It's completely different to micro mesh. It's specifically, whereas micro mesh is designed to polish plastics and stuff, essentially. This is designed for paint, and again, I'm just all I'm doing is kind of parroting what Jen told me, really. But yeah,
Jen got, that's the stuff, isn't it? There we go.
What? Where?
Yeah, there on the screen. Trizact P3000.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, now it's on the screen. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Because Jane's, well, we'll call her Jane for tonight. Jen's partner does this for a job. It's his profession, isn't it?
And I also believe it was Jen was a professional paint sprayer before she joined the Royal Air Force as well. So it's kind of a family expertise. No, Ian, try again. I thought it was going to be far easier than this. I really did.
Jen says it's a 6-inch disc with Velcro on the back. Use wet 3,000 grit. So it's available out there. Like I say, I just Googled it, and that was the first image I saw out there.
You just cut it up into little pieces, and I removed the Velcro backing so it doesn't, because the Velcro backing can scratch your paint finish if you apply too much pressure, and the Velcro backing ends up hitting the paint. So I actually use a razor blade. There you go, Rob's got it. I use a razor blade and slice off the Velcro backing, so you've just got the foam and the actual abrasive itself.
We have a winner.
We have a winner. There we go.
Right. Well, also a correction to something I said on Sunday's show, which we could be here for 90 minutes doing corrections.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
But I got absolutely modelled up with Hawker Siddeley 125s, because I was convinced that the Americans didn't fly them in the lovely low-vis camouflage scheme, but Dave Fleming did unearth this lovely pic off of Air Britain, copyright Sean Connor. And there you go. I do believe that's a 125-800 in lovely, lovely low visibility European colours. So
interesting. Looking at that European one, for an aircraft that would never have flown in any other colours, that darker green looks to be 34079 rather than 34092.
Right.
Which is the same scheme the Phantoms flew in. Where rather than repaint the whole thing, they literally, with the Phantoms, they just replaced the tan with the grey. So whereas the actual colour should be 34092 for the darker green, that looks to me very much like 34079. Interesting. Possibly painted in Europe along with the Phantoms.
I'm sure Dave will illuminate us as to whether you could actually build this version out of the Matchbox kit. I know you can't build it out of the Airfix kit. So
I had a look at this myself the other day, and I think the engines are different. The engines in the Matchbox one are quite a bit slimmer, I think.
okay.
Now, whether that's a Matchbox accuracy issue or the actual engines on this variant were bigger. Turbofan engines just tend to have got bigger and bigger over the years, haven't they? So I mean, you compare that to the Dominis engines, and it's quite a lot different. So, but I'm sure Dave will. Oh, he already has sword kit.
There we go. It is an attractive scheme, and again, just kind of cements how international the Domini ended up being.
It's an attractive aeroplane, isn't it?
Very nice aeroplane.
It's a very, very attractive aeroplane.
Mike Williams says, "Where is Mr. Pollard? I did miss the intros. You did miss the intro, Mike. Mr. Pollard will be along this evening. He is going to be a little bit late as he has other business to attend to. So we will rock you. Indeed, we will kind of carry on regardless." Also tonight. Now, another thing I noticed you were talking about this week, Drew, was this.
Oh, Lord. Can somebody just send me this Hercules, please?
See, I like the Japanese one. I think the Japanese one is...
Well, the reason I highlighted those two schemes is because both schemes are extremely attractive. And both schemes are... Well, that's the paint... I mean, I photoshopped it and knocked it around a bit so they fitted on the same screen. But those are two of the schemes that are actually included in the kit. And yeah, I do really, really like the Japanese one and would like to do one. But I've maintained all along that I want to do the South Korean European one scheme. So that's what I'm sticking with.
Okay.
But I don't know if perhaps Jen's intending to do the Japanese one. I don't know. No, Jen, I don't have the Domini.
No,
I don't have the. I don't have. Do you know what? It's one of those kits I've never had and never built. The Airfix Domini.
Oh, Dave says with a bit of a hack, the 700 and 800 had bigger engines, which are retrofitted to RAF 400s and 600s. Thank you, Dave. You should write a book on the subject. To be honest with you.
So I was right then.
You were right. Yeah, you were right. You also were. I still like that Japanese one, but hey ho.
Well, that transport scheme the Japanese use these days is beautiful. It's a really beautiful scheme. Blue grey.
You could probably slap that on a Z37A and make it look nice. So
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, you were also talking about the wing assembly.
Yeah, it's a really elegant solution because I was looking at how they some of the sprue breakdowns and you can't really tell. But if you have a look on the end of the lower wing pieces, there's like a full form aerofoil section piece there molded in, and also on the outboard of this upper center wing section that's also the same. So when those pieces are glued together and locked together, that's going to be a really, really strong assembly, which is, it's almost the parts are going to brace against each other. So once that's in place, then you just drop those outer wing panels in place, and there's clearly a ledge there that those outer wing panels will drop into. I just think it's just a really nice, elegant solution. And as I said on my post on my model page, Zvezda kits fit these days.
It's certainly a better solution to how Airfix did it back in the 70s, which was literally it's partly a stub molded to the fuselage, and then the wing joins onto that, which means you end up with a seam line. And I'm trying to remember if the Eshi kit was the same or not. I built it. I should remember. I'm just googling images of the Eshi kit.
Do you know what? I don't remember either, if I'm blunt. No, I'm pretty sure that was separate wings like the Airfix kit.
Yeah, it is. I've just seen a sprue shot here, and they plugged into the fuselage, which means you always end up with a bit of a seam to join. A bit of a seam, and a weak wing assembly. It wanted to naturally start like that.
That's the kind of thing. Is I was wondering how, is this kit going to need any spars or anything? Because I mean, in terms of big kits, the last big kits I built were a couple of the Airfix Victors, and that model is nothing if not sturdy. It's an incredibly strong build, and I was kind of wondering if the Hercules was going to be of the same ilk. I don't quite understand what Dave is saying there.
Oh, I think I do. I think he's saying is the aerofoil on the inside parts of those parts where it says A2, is that to match like an aerofoil shape in the fuselage, so it kind of slots in there?
I'm presuming so, yes, but I don't. I couldn't swear to it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I assume so. Just going back a second, I'm interested in what scheme Jen is planning to do with her Hercules.
She's saying if she gets a second one, she'll do a Japanese one. But
yeah, I mean, if I get a second one, I'll do the Japanese one.
Yeah.
But I don't know which scheme Jen is doing. Bearing in mind, we have to do the schemes from the kit.
Absolutely.
When we get hold of them. So I'm presuming Jen will be doing the RAF one. But
yeah. Right, hold the front page. Breaking news.
Oh, hello. Oh, look.
Hello.
He's decided to come and join.
Sorry for my late appearance.
Sorry for your extreme tardiness.
Yeah.
Yes. What did I miss?
Awesome stuff. Absolutely awesome stuff. Well, I tell you what, you both missed this week, and that was that. Look at that. Absolutely glorious. That is velvet. I can't remember what it's called. It's called velvet something. That is a lavender cake and chocolate fudge cake. And that was at the Blitz Tea Rooms in Weston-super-Mare.
See, when we were at the Blitz Tea Rooms earlier this year, I really wanted to try the lavender cake, and I wish I had now. I've always been mildly disappointed with velvet cake. It looks like it should taste much more exciting than it actually does. Whereas,
trust me,
it's just cake.
This was quite exciting. In fact, what we ended up doing was carefully carving it up into 3 portions so that we could all have a bit of each other's cake, and it was delicious.
But it looks like it should have some kind of a fruity sort of thing going on with it, with the colour and all that sort of thing. And it's just, every time I've tried it, it's just cake. I mean, it's nice, don't get me wrong, but it's just cake.
Yeah. Now, I have been on the final stretch now with your Sherman, Drew, and
I've done a really nice job of that.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
I'm really impressed with my woodwork.
Yes, the one thing I have tried differently on this, which I don't usually do, which is to actually use enamel washes to get the dust effects. I always prefer doing this with pigments for some bizarre reason, but probably because they dry as dust, so they are kind of mirroring the real thing. But what I've been using quite a bit is actually thinning down the MIG oil brushes and using them as washes, because they actually act as washes really, really nicely. So, and then once they've dried, you can go in there with like a little stiff brush and actually just kind of blend them in a bit further. But I think this is, thank you. I think this is going to be it now. I think it's just going to be put the decals on, seal it, and just a sealing coat on the turret for the decals, and then a little bit of just some mud splashes. And that's the end of that one.
I really like the reflections on the turret there. It looks like a really nice texture and finish on that, which looks like virtually like a new tank would with slightly shiny sort of paint.
Well, I think, to be honest with you, the kit could do with more texture to the surfaces. Svezda have molded everything very flat and shiny, and going through my Sherman books here, they could do with a little bit more texture, but that's not something, I'm building this straight from the box, so that's not
it's not something that's appropriate for this model, but
yeah, precisely. So but yeah, great fun, and as we've said ad nauseum, just silly money, 25 quid for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Right.
Dave agrees.
Dave agrees. Red velvet cake overrated. Right, Mr. P, what have you been up to this week?
What have I been up to this week? Interesting week. I think it's fairly safe to say.
Is that like may you live in interesting times? Is it that sort of interesting week?
Yes. It's been an interesting week. Airfix Fallen Nat.
Yes.
Said I would do it. Started doing it. So I've started working on one of those. Really nice little kit, I have to say. So I've sort of got. I have a Nat-shaped.
Shut the front door.
Yeah.
That's an aeroplane.
It's an aeroplane, an aeroplane. It is my first aeroplane for 6 months. Count them.
Can you remember how to build them?
Seemingly not, if this is anything to go by. My ability to be precise with my construction seems to have gone out of the window. Completely forgetting how to cut parts away from runners. That's the first thing. Riveting in straight lines, not such a good thing anymore. Adding fasteners in straight lines, also not such a good thing anymore.
That's kind of a really interesting sort of discussion topic, I think. Do you think these skills are quickly perishable?
Mine are. I'm like the Keith Moon of model making. Every time I build one, I have to remind myself how I did the last one. I'm terrible. Yeah, I do feel like you lose a little bit of muscle memory. I was just going to say that. It's not a huge problem. It's just sort of getting back into the rhythm of it. I think when you're doing other things and your brain is working elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you've been completely divorced from aeroplanes for 6 months by necessity. And it just when you said you were having to remind yourself how to build them, it made me think, what would happen if I was away from it for 6 months?
Yeah, the other thing about it as well is that when you're away from a particular genre for that amount of time, you lose. I think you lose a big chunk of enthusiasm for the subject. So it's been the last couple of weeks have been trying in the sense that, in many senses actually, but trying in the sense that I've sort of dabbled with a few aircraft kits and not really got the enthusiasm to build any of them. So I've sort of tinkered around the edges a little bit and gone, no, I don't really want to build this. And then I've done another one. I don't really want to build this either. And then I've sort of kept on going backwards and forwards. So this is the furthest I've got with an aircraft model. And it still feels a bit like dipping in and out of a movie on Netflix that you sort of work through the first 20 minutes and think it's going to be rubbish. And then you turn it off and then watch something you've already watched, like Hot Fuzz for the 18th time. It's a bit like that. And I can't quite work. It's not that I don't love aircraft or anything like that. It's just that at the moment I switched off that part of my brain that loves them enough to build them in miniature. So I'm sort of working my way through that at the moment.
Sort of reactivating that part of your brain.
I think so, yeah. And also it's having that. You must be the same. If you love a particular thing, Mirage 3s. Let's take Mirage 3s or John with F-16s. So when you're doing that and you're building something else, you think to yourself, well, my time's precious at the moment. Do I want to be building this, or I want to be building another one of my Mirage 3s for my collection? And so at the moment, I'm sort of stuck in that slight rut of I would rather be building a 1975 Tamir kit. But there are lots of aircraft kits that I now want to sort of get involved in. I think we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, about the Tamir classics? That was one of the ones. I've also got a 48 scale Hong Kong models B-17 that's staring me in the face, which I also really want to have a crack at. So that's something big. And John sort of reminded me. I use the word remind. I think the word I'm looking for is shamed me into taking another look at the Matchbox Privateer that I've now been working on for the thick end of 2 years. So it's those kind of things, but it is an odd thing when you sort of fall out of doing something. The only other time it happens, and I know you're not a football fan, but it is if you watch football regularly, week in, week out, and you miss a week, you miss it. But if you're not watching football for 6 months, you find it hard to get the enthusiasm to go to the game again. And then when you watch it 2 or 3 weeks, you bang into it It's a similar thing with a modelling genre for me. I have to sort of be into it, and then I find that I'm obsessed with it for 6 months, and then I want to do something else. It's an odd kind of concept.
I tend to find out with armor. I can go for a year without building armor. Then for 2 or 3 months, that's all I want to build, and I rattle through 3 or 4 kits in a few months, and then I just kind of drift back to aircraft, and I'm there again. And so I suppose sort of 30% of my time maybe is spent on armor, but the rest of the time is pure aircraft for me.
Yeah, it was like today. Jen released some photos of the Mustang that the Mustang, that truck that she's just finished off.
Oh yes,
the Zvezda one. And I was looking at it going, I wouldn't mind building one of those. And so my brain automatically sort of switched over again to it. I was like, there
Don't
I am.
you have the Panzer? Haven't you got the
I've got the
Panzer?
I've got the Panzer. Yeah.
Isn't that the same truck? I thought that was basically the same truck.
No, that's got 8 wheels, hasn't it, Panzer?
Bear in mind, this has taken Jen the best part of nearly a year to actually get round to finishing it
off.
Well,
yes.
I do remember at Telford, Jen going, "Oh, quite fancy building that," and I'm kind of like laughing behind my hands because she's only seen about 3 of the sprues, and then it's like, "Well, here are the other 6."
Yes, it is an extraordinary thing, though. I think she's done an extraordinary job on an incredible plastic model kit. I mean, it is phenomenal. And she's done a great job on it. So, but yeah, the aircraft. And so now I'm sort of switching my brain back into that genre and looking around at what's here. But I know what I'll be like. I'll pick something and then I'll dive straight into it, and I'll be back where I want. But oddly, it will click. And the last time this happened to me, the last time I was sort of in this slightly fragile emotional state where aircraft modelling was concerned, you might remember I built the Edward 72nd scale FW190 with its full engine bay.
Yes, vividly.
Yes. So that was the model that brought me out of my malaise. It might take something like that to bring me out of my malaise this time around.
Well, funny you say that, because I am hoping this Friday to have a bunk off and perhaps have a trip to Frome. And one of the things I'm hoping to pick up there is actually the Edward Z37A.
The little dog duster.
Yeah, and Drew says that they come 2 in a box. Ooh. So
it's a dual combo. So
yeah, so it possibly justifies the outlay of going out and buying one if I know that one of the models then gets built by somebody else. So first one of you to raise your hand gets the model. There we go. There we have a winner. So
I do actually quite find it is one of those.
I will be ordering my own very shortly anyway. So
I'll build your second one as well. Then we'll do loads of them. Do hundreds of the damn things. It is.
Where did I say I wasn't going to build 2 of them?
We know you of old. He's speechless. I've done it. Yes. Do you know
that's
unbelievable, Pollard. You turn up late and then you lace into people.
You know what? I have to say, in the entire time that I've known you, I've wanted to render you utterly speechless. That is the very first time I've managed to do it, and I genuinely feel more happy than I've ever felt in my life.
Comes off the subs bench, and within his first challenge is a 2-footed tackle, and he's got a red card. Unbelievable!
It's a Jordan Pickford challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, here is Jen's Mustang.
Yeah.
Which, as we'll just cycle through some pictures here very, very briefly. But yeah, she's done an absolute bang-up job on that. And what I also like is her selective use of weathering, by keeping the dirty areas dirty and actually keeping the rest of the vehicle relatively. Unlike me, I'd be chucking. I would be covering it in mud. Copyright me.
It looks like
that canvas awning's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
It looks like a civilian truck, doesn't it? It has that sort of nice road dirt around the lower sort of areas and the wheels and the chassis. But the cab and everything is pretty much clean. I think she's done a wonderful job on that. I mean, Jen's, at the risk of her thinking that I'm going overboard, as she often does when I compliment her models, but that's very typical of her style, and it is just a beautiful build of a fabulous kit. I think
she can build a bit.
She can be in the band.
She can build a bit.
She can be in the band. Yeah, it's very nice. Well done, Jen. That's absolutely lovely, I have to say.
And for some reason, StreamYard has now gone completely mad here, and it's not letting me. That was weird. StreamYard has just gone very strange on me, and I can't actually get back to the page again. So we are stuck on this image until I'm going to have to do a. I'm going to see what happens if I.
Oh, where's he gone?
I don't know.
He's just disappeared.
And is it just you and I don't know, because I can't see anything because there's a truck in the way.
Is this just a podcast now?
I think it is. Yes. It's I don't know what John's playing at.
That's very odd, isn't it? That we've managed to get a podcast. So what did I miss? I know you've been working on your Mirage 3, which looks fabulous.
Oh, there it goes. Oh, here we are. Oh, hey, hello.
StreamYard just completely crashed there for a second, so I apologise for that.
He's always going to blame something else, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's always going to. Yes, the Mirage Spence. Yeah, there's.
Yes.
As I say, I got some flat coat on it after 2 coats of gloss varnish. Yeah, and I got the flat coat on it last night, and I started weathering the undersides earlier on today. So it's starting to. I sort of anticipate another five days maybe.
Nice.
And then hopefully the Hercules will be at some point.
Could I trouble you for information regarding your flat coat? What did you use this time?
Oh, excuse me. Beer, sorry. It's Wednesday. We're allowed. It's Wednesday. We're allowed beer. I
have squash.
Oh, you're very good. You're a very good boy.
Yes,
Liz will be proud of you. Anyway, varnishes. That was done with GX113, the UV cut super clear flat.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But cut with the rapid thinner. I was just discussing it with John earlier. The rapid thinner seems to do the same for flat varnishes it does for metallics.
And did you put on a layer like you normally do? Or did you do it in thin layers? Just put on one wet coat?
Just one wet coat straight over. But the rapid thinner seems to flash off so fast that it doesn't allow the flat coat to settle into the varnish, if you like.
Right.
So it gives a really, really nice, very ultra smooth but flat finish. Which is, I don't know if you can.
I saw it in the photographs actually, and it looked great. You
can see where it just sort of catches the light, but is still definitely flat.
And the other thing as well, I was going to mention when you showed this off last time, is I have an admission to make, which is probably going to get me. I mean, I'm teetering on the edge of being blown out of the.
If you say you don't like the Mirage,
no. It might be even more ludicrous than that. I'm likely to be blown out of the airlock of the Aircraft Modelers Guild as it stands, given my tardy admission earlier on. But the admission is, I've never masked off. I've done a lot of camouflage masking with blue tack and all of that sort of stuff. I've never done a 3-tone camouflage scheme.
Really?
Because, and I'll tell you why that is, and maybe it's just an intellectual thing with me. I can't work out how to mask the camouflage patterns. And then I saw the way you'd done it, and I thought, that's how you do it. You actually do you do it as a 2-tone camouflage scheme, and then you just mask off the 3rd one over the top of everything.
And then because invariably you have to look at the way the aircraft was painted, and invariably they do work from dark to light.
And I thought, how do I mask off the 3rd colour with the blue tack in place for the 2nd colour?
You know what?
You don't do it like that, do you?
Sometimes I do, but it depends entirely on what the original camouflage looks like. But most of the time, although it does take longer, I would rather mask off to paint the base colour and tan in this case, mask off to do the light green, remove all that masking, then remask for the dark green.
Yeah.
And that's the way. And then what you find is that you'll end up going back and doing some corrections. But I mean, on this, it took about 30 minutes worth of correction work once that had all been.
It was bizarre because John and I were talking after the last time the three of us were together, and I think you grumbled about German armour or something. You were being slightly petulant about the whole thing, and you said, "Oh, I'm not talking about German armour. It's even more boring than F-16s." And then you went off, and John and I were chatting behind the scenes, and when I next turned my phone on in the living room while I was watching a bit of TV, which must have been all of 30 seconds later, you'd masked it off and sprayed the camouflage pattern and posted the photographs. I was like, how does he do that then? How was he doing it that quick? It was an extraordinary piece of Olympic masking and spraying.
Or you could spray it freehand. Would you believe that was actually done with Vallejo Model Air? And
really?
Because for some reason their greens and their browns actually spray rather nicely. The pigments in them spray really well. But what I ended up doing on that was actually going back with the tan color and refining the lines with that, because it's a weird phenomena that light overspray on dark is less noticeable than dark overspray on light.
Absolutely.
So I am going to try the next time I do something in RAF dark green and dark earth, I'm actually going to paint it dark green first and then freehand the dark earth camouflage and see what that does.
One of the other things I saw a couple of years ago as a way of minimizing the appearance of overspray was that when you've done the dark and the light colors, if you take a really, really sort of 95% thinned the lightest color and thin it back about 95% and give the model a very light mist over, it barely changes the dark color at all, but it blends all the edges really. And I can't remember, somebody showed a couple of Dominican or Honduran Mustangs done with it, and it just looked phenomenal. It just, it's just, for me, the overspray is my bane. I hate overspray when I'm freehanding. So going back and retouching it is just something that you have to do.
That's exactly the technique that I used on this year. I've used it in the past before, but because I did 2 tanks this year that were both in German 3-tone camo, that's precisely what I did. Was I went back once I'd done the camo, went back to the base color, which was the Tamiya dark yellow lacquer, and thinned that down. It was probably about 5% paint and 95% clear lacquer, so that it ends up being like a translucent kind of glossy glaze. Yeah. But the moment you put that in, not only is it giving me a slightly more glossy surface to do washes and bits and pieces on, but just that slight glaze then really pulls all the camouflage pattern together, and it just sharpens everything up. So
I remember in Tamiya magazine when it first came out, Angus Crichton was doing a lot of German armour in there, and that was one of his tricks. He would paint the model in dark yellow, and then he'd put the 3-tone on or whatever, 2-tone camouflage on, and then he'd overspray it with a misted layer of that base dark yellow. And it really works well because it turns everything back, it lightens everything up, lightens the green and the brown up, and then it gives you a nice kind of sort of tightened scheme. I really like the way that works. It's a very pleasing way of doing it.
Which is also one of those, and this is not intended as a knock on pre-shading. It's why I don't like pre-shading on freehand schemes, because the fact that you have to keep going back and touching stuff in, really impacts the kind of any sort of airbrushed weathering you've done. It's why I kind of like, if I'm using blue tack to mask, you can go back and do all the weathering you want before removing the masking.
Yeah.
And it will be, for each color, it will be sort of consistent across the model when it's done. But it's one of those reasons I don't like those airbrushed sort of weathering effects if you're freehanding a camouflage.
At the risk of kicking a hornet's nest,
go on, kick it.
Pre-shading. I use pre-shading. I've used pre-shading in the past. I use it as a step, not as a means to itself. But to use pre-shading underneath a 3-tone camouflage scheme, it seems to me to be a ridiculous idea. Because what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with almost islands of color around the pre-shade all of the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
if you shade around a square,
Yeah.
then you put 3 colors over the top of that, or 2 colors over the top of that. You're going to end up with differentiation between not only the pre-shade but each of the colors as well, and you're going to end up with almost clouds of color. It just doesn't work.
Pre-shading to me works better when you are trying to break up monotonous areas of just a single color. That I think is its strength. So something like olive drab, where you certainly always get a lot of variation in the tone and the saturation of the color, I think it has great benefits for doing that. But again, this year doing those two, doing that Italy Sturm Tiger and the little Tamiya Panther, as far as I can remember, and I'll probably get corrected on this, but I didn't bother doing any shading on it. What was the point? I could shade the yellow very nicely, but then the moment I'm putting the other colours on,
you can't do the camouflage colours. It's really difficult to keep. It's really difficult to paint inside the lines, if you like. That's what I'm trying to say.
The last model that I did any kind of work like that, pre-shading, and I guess it was pre-shading in its sort of broadest sense, was the Hellcat that I did last year with the yellow wings. But that was a slightly different thing, because what I did was that I sprayed everything in white to begin with, and then I sprayed using the texture templates. I sprayed a whole bunch of different layers of orange and darker yellow over the top of the white to break the pattern up, and then sprayed the yellow over that. So I guess it was kind of a pre-shade, because it was a sort of darker color over the base white, but it wasn't around panel lines.
No, it was a pre-shade, but it was you customized your process to suit the model. Yeah. It wasn't just a generic pre-shade. It wasn't just generic along all the panel lines and away you go.
Beyond that, I can't remember the last time I pre-shaded a model where you go around panel lines and around that kind of thing. I would almost rather just paint the whole thing in one.
Yeah, I mean there's no shading on that at all. It's just all 3 colours sprayed straight on an opaque coat, and then I'll do some very minor shading work with probably some oil paints. At some point in the next few days. At the moment, I'm adding all the sort of dark streaking and stuff to the underside mainly. But I find particularly in 1/72 scale, it's very easy to overcook it very, very quickly. So we've had this discussion. I think I had this discussion with you or John sort of last year sometime about how I'm sort of trying to strip my technique back again, having gone so far into doing different techniques that I wasn't happy with. That Focke-Wulf 190 I did, the Dora 9 I did earlier this year, if you remember, I wasn't happy with that. I used all of the shading techniques and everything, and I thought it looked horrible. And so I've sort of started stripping my techniques right back again and sort of working from the ground up. So that Mirage there is that there's no shading at all on any of the colours. It's just purely the colours from the pot, which is, I think, what you do a lot of the time, isn't it?
What I do?
Yeah. You don't generally tend to shade, or if you do, it's so subtle that it's all but invisible. And I'm thinking
there's a very good reason for that, actually, and why I don't shade around larger panels. What's causing shadows? What would cause shadows on the real thing?
Well, absolutely.
Let me push that argument as far as it can go. If I was to build an aircraft model, we use Mirage 3 because that seems to be the sort of what we're talking about with your model. If I was to build a Mirage 3 and I build it so that it is displayed in a certain way towards me, normally with models that I build, that usually goes from top right hand corner to bottom left hand corner, because I'm right handed, it goes that way. Or if it's a Spitfire, it goes from bottom right to top left, because that's just the way it is. Let's say the sun is behind my head when I'm looking at the model. So all of one side of the model is in sunlight. The shadows would be the other side of the fuselage. If the sunlight falling on that aeroplane is even across its surface, which it isn't going to be because the sun moves around an object, the vast majority of that aircraft is going to have a similar layer of sheen across it, similar layer of light falling on the top of it. The only place that you're going to get any kind of shadow, is inside the panel lines, okay? Because you're not really, unless you've got a protuberance, unless you've got something like a wing fence, you've got a big wing fence, or you've got, I don't know, you've got an ECM blister or something like that on the side of the fuselage. Chances are it's all going to be the same. So it seems to me the idea of adding shading onto the surface of an aircraft goes against the way that aircraft would look in the flesh. Now, an armoured vehicle is different. And the reason an armoured vehicle is different is because it has overhangs. You have turret baskets, you have bins, you have tools, you have all shields, all of those kind of things that can naturally cause shadows. If you've got a smooth aircraft surface, it doesn't really cause those kind of shadows. So what you're doing, when people say I shaded the model, what they're really talking about is they've made that model appear to them and to the people that perhaps are going to look at it more interesting than it needs to be. Because if you produce a grey aeroplane, an F-16 with a two-tone grey camouflage scheme, that is naturally a relatively disinteresting aircraft, if that's the right word to use. Because it's just two shades of grey.
It's a disinteresting scheme, isn't it? It's not.
Yes, it is. But it's broken up then by the detail. It's broken up by the weapons, the pylons, the undercarriage, by some nice markings on the tail, cockpit open, the seat, the ejection seat, all of those kind of things. But to actually force shadows in its broadest term into the surface of an aircraft, it is only there. That's a miniature conceit. That is not a replication of an actual thing on the surface of an aircraft. It's there just to make it interesting. Now, the other side, the addition to that is you can make an aircraft surface interesting in terms of where it's faded. So you've got fading and you've got multiple tonal shifts because the paintwork has faded or panels have been replaced with different colors. That isn't shadow. That's just that's a disintegration of the tone of the paint.
That's weathering.
Yes, that's weathering.
That's weathering.
And I think if we're talking about this, because we all have a different viewpoints on it, don't we? People like those extremes of weathering and extremes of appearance on their models, and they're perfectly entitled to do that. But I do get slightly. It does raise an eyebrow slightly when people say, "Yeah, I did a load of shading. I shaded the surface of my aircraft." Why did you?
I think they're using the term as a descriptor rather than they're describing a technique rather than the effect that they're actually trying to achieve. So I'm with you that when people say I shaded, I shaded this particular part of the fuselage, I don't think what they're trying to do is actually create shadows. What they are trying to do is break up that monotonous surface in order to convey concentrations of dirt or grease or all that kind of thing. I'm just trying to find a picture here of a typical US 8th Air Force bomber with really gritty, really kind of gnarly olive drab color. But I think it's a term that gets used, but without it necessarily conveying the effect that is actually being strived for.
It's a generic
shorthand.
Term.
It's shorthand.
It's not used accurately. It's just used as a generic term.
Yeah, and I guess the sort of the counter argument to that is, if you're not adding shadows in, then and at the risk of agreeing with Sir Jamie of Hago, master modeler of these parts, who says that it's better to add shading to darken around panel lines after the paint's been put on, then I have some sympathy with that argument, because if you're degrading the finish that starts off as it would clean and then degrading it backwards from there, in many ways you're likely to end up with a sort of more consistent result in terms of reality. However, not all modelers want to create something that looks like a real machine. They want to create something that looks like an artistic rendition in their own heads. And both approaches are equally valid and shouldn't be denigrated one against the other. I'm just putting forward what I would.
I don't necessarily. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that the sequence of events of how you do something is necessarily that important. I know you will get people who say, they go, oh, in reality, somebody didn't come along and start spraying the paint with darker areas and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, no, that's stating the obvious. They also didn't come at the factory in a giant box on plastic sprues. It's what you are trying to do is you are trying to convey an effect. And if you are ultimately, it's the end result that matters. If you are going through what to some people might seem an incredibly tortuous route to do it, if the result justifies the means, if you see what I mean.
Just look at chipping on armor or an aircraft for that matter. So much of that now is done after the main paint scheme. You're exposing you're working on a process to expose the underlying finish after you've applied the base finish, which is completely counterintuitive. But when it's done well, it just looks amazing. So it's not actually, it's not the process that is the issue. It's the execution of it, if that makes sense.
And that was proved to me today when I was going through some of the magazines that were sent up through from work. There's an armor feature in one of them, and I can't remember which one it is now. And I was reading through the feature, and I was going, God, that looks awful. That's awful. That's awful. That's awful. God, what has he done that for? That's awful. Oh my God, that's incredible. Because what I was doing is I was picking out a step from the process in isolation. Why has he done that? Why has he done that? And then I looked at the completed model and I was like, wow, that is absolutely amazing.
Something happens over the course of that just brings it all together.
Yeah,
well done chipping like Mr. Kovac does. It looks absolutely amazing. I cannot chip to save my life. It's why the whole front of the drop tanks on this Mirage should be basically large patches of bare metal, but I'll screw it up. It'll look
bits of spongy, your friend.
The problem is, Spence, I've tried it and it just looks awful to me.
Now
that's my execution of it, clearly. But I can't get
that thing looks like it's been set on fire.
Yeah, but that is fairly typical of RAF Mitchell 3s. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that, and I mean, I will at some stage one day actually build that scheme because it is in the fairly recent Airfix kit. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, how would I go about doing that? How would I even begin to replicate that scheme? And it would be in layers. It really would be in layers. Just to throw a really mad idea out there, what I would probably do is actually start off with a base color of actually a tan, and then do all kinds of darkening effects on various parts of the airframe. Not every panel line, but just in concentrations, like you can see here around the engine ncells.
I love the way you can track the footfall of the maintenance ergs.
Yes,
it's
and then go over that with an olive drab, a very light olive drab, and then start building up the olive drab in. But it would be a series of layers. There would then be layer. I might even, when I would say I've given it that kind of tan base color, is actually then apply very heavily thinned down speckled kind of effects all over the aircraft to really break the surface up. That then will get blended and assume part of the patina of the aircraft when you start adding the olive drab on top. I don't know. All I know is I look at that and I think that is one heck of a subject to actually try a whole slew of mad ideas to see where it takes you.
That's bringing back, nightmares of painting that P38 that I did last year with like a million layers of paint. I have to say, it's no B-26 Marauder, but the Mitchell's a fine-looking aircraft, isn't it? Even in that dreadful state. What a beautiful machine.
Can we please have some Marauders?
I'll try and find some. I'm talking about
generally
in 72nd and 48 scales. Please, can we have some Marauders? The Hasegawa kit is basically unavailable these days. I think ICM will do the Marauder.
I'm with you there.
The Marauder is just the best looking twin-engined aircraft.
It's a fantastic airplane,
Second World War, isn't it? By a million miles.
No, I'd agree with that. It is. I'm just trying to find some photographs.
Like everybody else, I like the Mosquito, but the Marauder's a much better looking airplane.
No, I would veer towards the Mosquito there. And
as
for that Westland Whirlwind thing with the big guns.
All right, here we go. Let's put an end to that now.
Can I just say, Black Widow till I die?
Oh yeah, that's a tidy looking machine as well, I have to say. But the Marauder, I do love the Marauder.
But you've had new Black Widow kits recently, haven't you?
Yeah, but they're shocking. Yes. I like that. Did you like how I neatly avoided?
Yes, well done.
Yes.
What's wrong with the Hobby Boss kit then? Because you started building that. So what's wrong with it? All right, what's right with it?
It's just actually in many ways the overall shape is not that bad. It's just massively oversimplified, and they completely screwed up the upper fuselage on the A and the C for that matter. The only accurate one of the three is the B, because they put the turret on that and they completely redid the upper fuselage. For it, because there's the upper fuselage of the Black Widow's got a really subtle set of contours on it that if you don't, it never actually gets wider than the turret, but it flares to accommodate the turret. It's a really strange. You've got to look at it and look at the cross section as it travels back over where the turret was located on the aircraft. And everyone built was exactly the same. It's just that some had the turret and some didn't. But all Hobby Boss did was gave it a consistent section over the top. I did modify one, and then the P61B turned up, and I thought, oh well, that's right in that kit anyway. So if you want to do an A, chop a couple of millimeters off the nose, and you've got an A, basically.
I appear to have upset Jennifer.
You have upset Jenna, so I am, without resorting to the bell, I'm going to try and quell the rioting masses here by, there we go.
Oh, just look at it though. Look at it. Beautiful.
I think it is the second best looking American medium bomber of the Second World War.
Second best?
Yeah, because the Douglas A-20 Havoc is the best.
Yeah, I mean, I would have said for me it's the Invader, but it's Douglas. So
no, it's definitely the Marauder. It's just.
But no, basically once they got into the swing of it, the Americans did a complete set of winners in terms of medium bombers, didn't they? But the Mitchell, the Invader, the Marauder, the Boston and Havoc, they were all absolutely beautiful designs.
That's a textbook example of pretty extreme weathering as well, isn't it? That would be a real challenge to do.
That is, because that's not shiny. That is really kind of grubby, dirty, anodized metal on that one. That's an absolute shocker, and that would be a challenge. Also, just how the upper markings have faded as well, and that's an absolute beauty. And Go on.
I was going to say, have you seen the photographs of the ones operating from Italy with all the mud on the rear fuselage and stuff? Absolutely caked in like 6 inches thick of mud, wet mud from where they took off of these airstrips in Italy. It's how they trimmed that aircraft in flight. I just do not know. It must have been all of that, Spence. By the time the aircraft was off the ground, it must have been half a ton of mud on the all streaking up the rear fuselage. to the over the empennage as well, over the vertical fin and the horizontal tail as well. It was just incredible. Their photographs are out there somewhere.
Yeah,
Going back to what you said earlier, though, I do agree with you about the Marauder. The personal love of it aside, we surely do need some to give it some more love in terms of.
The Hasegawa kit is beautiful, but it's just virtually impossible to find.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got one kit. I've got one of those in the attic.
I'm the same.
And that's the B26G, which is the one with the increased wing incidents and stuff that Hasegawa, to their credit, designed a whole new fuselage for. So I'm gonna spike my own guns here and say I think it needs to be done in 48 scale more than 72nd at the moment.
Yes.
Even though I'd rather have it in 72nd, I think it would probably be if someone like ICM hint were to do it, they would probably do it in 48 scale to start with. And I think,
dear Mr. Tamiya, I've been very good this year. Can we please have
don't even
48 scale B26 Marauder family, please? I promise to be good all next year as well. Yours truly, Spence, age 11 and a half. That would be,
I mean, we'd get stuck into those like we got stuck into the Lightnings, wouldn't we?
We would, yeah. And intriguingly, Tamiya they did a Japan of the Betty, didn't they, as a twin engine kind of bomb. But they've never attempted to have a go at those the American ones, and yet they wouldn't be massive kits in 48 scale. Well, they're not massive kits in 48 scale. No. And you would think that there would be an intriguing collection there that would.
But once again, Spencer, we're falling into the trap of trying to work out what Tamiya thinks from day to day.
Well,
and you can't do it. 2 years down the line, where's the F-14B Tomcat?
Yes, yeah, indeed.
It's just,
or nearly 20 years down the line, where's the F-16B?
Where's the twin seat F-16? It's just, you cannot.
Gotta say.
It's just you cannot, and it's part of the thing that almost it doesn't put me off Tamiya because I love them, but I don't tend to think of Tamiya in terms of building a family of models.
No.
I think of people like Edouard for that, which is for the 109. Although the Tamiya Messerschmitt 109s are stunning. For building a family, I'll go with the Edouard kit because they're doing the family. So
they're very much the beautiful meal that you treat yourself to on a Saturday night, when for the rest of the week you're popping to McDonald's for a cheeseburger and fries. They're not the sort of thing you're not going to be getting endless series of kits from Tamiya. That's not their business model. It's not how they operate.
It never has been. And people consistently fall into the trap of trying to second guess Tamiya. And you simply can't. The Tamiya 48 scale B17 has been coming for 30 years now. It's just, and people still say, "Oh, I've got some insider knowledge that it will be a B17," and lo and behold, it's not a B17 as well.
But that's the beautiful thing about them, isn't it? That when they do release a new kit, you're like, wow, especially an aircraft kit.
Yeah. Wow, I never even realised I wanted to build that kit, but I do now.
Well, we were speculating on the Sunday show the other week when we were looking at the Italeri Semavente and saying, is there scope for doing other versions, mainly the M13/40, the Caro Marta? Yeah. I've started building the thing now, and as I think you might have seen when I put some images up on the Facebook page the other day, it turns out that actually the figures and some other bits and pieces are not required for this model, which I think that conclusively points to the fact that Italeri will do an M1340 at some stage in the future. It's logical because
that is Italeri's game plan, though, isn't it? They do.
Yeah, that is. I think we can quite safely say there will be an M1340 in the future because all the bits are there and it's the layouts there, and you can see that it's going together quite nicely at the moment. It's going rather splendidly, it has to be said. So
Along similar lines, there's been much discussion this week about the Italeri 32nd scale Tornado GR4 and the weapons. I'm just putting it out there. I wonder how much conversation Edward have had with Italeri about that particular kit and how many sets we're likely to see from them, because they're not averse to the idea of producing 32nd scale weapons.
No, I mean, yeah, I would say you're almost certainly going to see Storm, Shadow, and Brimstone from them.
Yes,
because they've done them in other scales, so they're almost certainly going to do them in 32nd scale, because it's I hate to use the phrase no-brainer, but you know what I mean. It's an obvious. Yeah. It's an obvious. I mean, and did a Tornado ever look better than when it was carrying a pair of Storm Shadows?
Well, no.
And I suspect they'll probably do a Raptor pod as well.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're looking at, I guess, full etch sets for the interior, color etch, seat straps, that kind of thing. All the masking sets are likely to be coming out. I would think there will be resin sets for it. There's no doubt.
I'm sure Quinta are looking at their decals for the instruments and stuff like that. So, Jerry, he's not quitting over this rear cockpit. That's about the 5th time I've seen him mention it now.
He does have a point, though, but
he does Jerry, have a point, yeah.
Needs a rear cockpit too for a GR4. What we are going to do is we are going to hold our fire, a very fine 1987 album by a Canadian rock band, but we're going to hold your fire. We're going to wait until we actually get hold of a copy of this kit, and then we will critique it, and we are going to tell you what's good about it and what isn't good about it. So stuff like the weapons choices and the cockpit and all that, we will get round to covering that as and when. What we don't want to do is kind of jump in and start critiquing CAD and images and all that kind of stuff, because
thing is, Dave Fleming commented again, you're absolutely right, Dave, it is a £300 model with all those bits, but you're not going to build 10 of them.
No,
somebody's going to build one of those as the centerpiece of a collection or something. You're not going to build 10 £300 models. Who? I mean, I know there are people out there that build more than one 32nd scale model of a certain kit. Ian Ogilvy, looking at you. But for the most part, people don't. That is a sort of centerpiece. That is a centerpiece project for the year, isn't it?
And I have to say, at the risk of being sort of seeming to come across as being dismissive to those that are levelling criticism, pre-release criticisms of this kit, the lack of weapons for me is of no real consequence anyway. And I'll tell you why that is. Part of that is because I don't tend to load up the models that I build with lots of weapons, but also with that GR4, I'm really hoping to be able to do the retirement scheme in the dark green, dark grey. I think that would look absolutely fabulous. I don't really want to do one of the grey ones, so I'm not bothered about it being loaded up.
The dark green, dark sea grey was the best scheme that aircraft ever wore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really fancy doing that retirement scheme in.
But I mean, my point is, I mean, much as I love weapons, I've always got hundreds of weapon sets lying around, and I'm always buying resin missiles and bombs and stuff. I'm with you. I'm really not overly bothered. It's got two 250 tanks, Hindenburgers for Jamie. It's got accurate fuselage pylons. It's got paveway 4, and I think, although I've not seen it, there's some question over whether it's going to have the lightning pod. I know the box art shows it, but the sprues haven't yet. It might not be as comprehensive as people want, but it's representative of a fit.
Yeah.
For the aircraft.
But certainly, like John says, we'll wait until we get there. We'll get a hands on the box and everything, because it may well be that what's supplied more than makes up for what's not in the box.
And I mean, Rob says alarm. Well, did you ever see a Tornado GR4 on ops with alarm? I don't ever remember seeing one on ops with alarm missiles.
No.
We perhaps have to step back a little bit and say, if we've got a representative selection of stores for the kit, then is it worth adding another 30 quid to the price to chuck Storm Shadows and Brimstone and all that sort of?
The one thing I will add, and it's not a point about the Italeri kit at all, really. My sort of desire from the kit is that it is easy to build. And the reason I say that is because the Revell kit that had all of the drop slats and the flaps and everything, that wing was an absolute pig to put together on that 48 scale kit. It was so fragile, and that I'm hoping that Italeri have ironed out any of those creases that allows that model to be built. And the fact that you can build this model with everything drooped away, that to me is a real plus point for this.
That has been a bit of a bugbear for me with recent Revell kits. In fact, in the last 4 or 5 years, of all the some of the Revell kits that I bought and started, the only one that finally actually made it to fruition was the Corsair, which was horribly overcomplicated and over-engineered. Yeah, it should have been. Unfortunately, Revell made that model much harder than it should have been, and that because they were looking at it and they were, we want to get a Fleet Air one out of that, and you could clearly see that they were thinking, we might want to do longer nose versions in the future. It ended up being a jack of all trades and master of none, and they did the same with the Spitfire Mark II rather. For some reason, they obviously thought, well, the wingtips we can use on other versions, so we'll put them on another sprue. Despite the fact that you're talking about a Spitfire Mark II, where there's no point. You may as well just have the wing as an integral one, integrally molded tips. And there were little things like that. And again, I started it. I got probably about halfway through it, and I just thought, I could have built 2 Airfix ones in the time.
That's been a problem with a lot of Revell kits in the last few years. Is that you get halfway through and just go, I just don't want to go any further. I'm not interested anymore.
Yeah, I got like that. The Tornado I completed, as you'll all have seen that I completed the Tornado, but it was such a difficult model to put together, and basically because it had been broken down into like 1 million parts. And I was like, this isn't clever to break the fuselage down into 40 pieces. And the way that the wings were, and the wings had such tiny connections between the flaps and the wing bay that even just knocking it, the whole thing just came apart. And I was just like, I just don't even want
I've got three of those 48 Tornadoes here. I've got the IDS, I've got the GR4, and I've got the F3. And I've got absolutely no desire to build any of them.
Well, if you do, good luck. Absolutely. However, I mean, not to denigrate Revell kits too much, because I've built Revell kits over the last few years that I've really enjoyed. The Mustang in particular, I loved. I'd happily build another one of those 32nd scale Mustangs.
But the thing about the Mustang, Spencer, the thing I'd say about the Mustang is in that regard, there's less reason to really start breaking it down, because about the only areas of difference you've got on that are the fillets on the fuselage and that on the fin, and that's it. So everything else you can keep as is. And the Airfix did the same with theirs. The Airfix 48 scale Mustang is pretty much every Mustang variant you want in one box. But at the risk of bigging up the home team here, is Airfix, to their credit, tends to go slightly for more, tend not to over egg and try and get too many versions out of something. With the Beaufort, for example, I know people have been saying, well, can you build an Australian one out of it? Can you do this? Can you do this? No, it's being very specific as to what variant of Beaufort it is being, and without breaking it down so much that you end up with an overly fussy and overly complicated kit.
I think we tend to, certainly for me, I tend to these days look at those sorts of things and I get slightly frustrated. And that's a result of having had so many good years of kits being families of models, like the Edward 109. and 190 for that matter. Brilliant families of models, but not overly complicated. So when I see stuff that is really, really specific and means that you'll be looking at a lot of extra work to do any other variant, I understand it, but it also frustrates me.
But that depends whether the manufacturer is looking at doing a family of kits or whether they're just looking at it and thinking, well, we'll probably get 2 or 3 boxings out this max and that's it. Move on to the next subject.
No, and I understand that completely, but it doesn't mean I don't get frustrated.
Yeah. Incidentally, when's the Beaufort due out?
I thought it was already out for some reason.
Already out?
I can't remember.
I haven't seen anything anywhere.
I imagine it's fairly imminent. Let me just Google a second.
Looking forward to that.
It's very nice.
I know Mr. Jensen Taylor is particularly keen on that. I think that's one he's loving the idea of.
The Airfix website showing it is in stock, but that can mean.
I'm just having a quick look on eBay at the moment, and Airfix Beaufort is just bringing back the Beaufighter and a Frog Beaufort. So there's certainly nothing on eBay for sale at the moment. So I don't think it's out in the wild yet. No.
It will be on its way. And in fact, it was Matt who worked on that. So hello, Matt, if you're watching tonight. And when I was actually at Hornby last year, and we were going through it, and he was showing me the Frog kit. All that Frog kit is all over the place. When you look at the windscreen on the Frog kit, it makes you wonder how anybody in the design office, and bizarrely, the design office for Frog is the same building that Airfix are in at Margate. It's the same building. It's the old Frog factory. But how anybody in the design office at Margate was looking at the drawing, looking at a photograph, and going, "Yeah, that's close enough." It's not. It's all over the place.
But you know, there's dozens and dozens of Frog kits that are exactly like that. You know, as soon as you start taking any sort of a close look at them, they just fall apart.
Is it wrong to be this excited by the idea that the Airfix factory or design building is the same as the Frog one?
It's a lovely, it's a lovely sort of circle. Isn't it? It's a lovely circle of life, isn't it?
I think that's really nice.
Well, I think the greater there's another kind of like talk about how things kind of wander into your life and then they kind of it's a bit like Drew's favorite film Interstellar, about certain things are actually being manipulated behind the scenes by Matthew McConaughey, who we won't talk about because he's got himself into some trouble.
Has he?
Yeah. Is that as a kid, I remember building it was a Humbrol boxing of the Frog P40 in the AVG markings, in the Chinese markings. And I remember being fascinated by it because I like the markings. And when I built the kit, I was recreating the Dick Ward artwork on the back with my pencils and my pens and just drawing 4 views of camouflage, and et cetera, and I just remember from that the fact that it said Rovex, made in England, Frog, Margate, Kent on the back of the box and everything. So you kind of fast forward 30 odd years, and I'm now doing the same thing. I'm doing an AVG P40, effectively what we call a Tomahawk, and I'm doing it in the same scheme. I'm doing the 4 views, but it's not for Frog, it's for Airfix, but it was designed in the same building as the Frog one, and it's like everything kind of comes together again. It's I love that. I love those kind of circularity, those kind of coincidences.
I would say it's life, isn't it? It's a
really strange.
It's oddly thing. I'm sure at some point that because we're pretty much working our way through the classic kits. I think Frog will be one that we'll discuss at some point, won't it? Although I might have to do more research on that because my knowledge of Frog kits is not.
Do you know what? This is the weird thing: is that it's amazing how many things that used to be the sole domain of the Frog range have now ended up sneaking their way into the Airfix range. So you've had things like the P40, the early P40, the P40B/C, You've had the Beaufort, you've had the Whitley, you've had the Shackleton. There's been other other kind of things that Frog did, like Lancasters and B-17s, Wellingtons. Well, the Wellington is a 1C, was what the Frog kit was. I'm sure I could go on, but yeah, there's bit by bit. You look at things, and you think, yeah, that's kind of. Are the ghosts of Frog working their influence?
I think
Wink,
that's true.
wink,
but also,
wink.
You can sort of work from Frog to Novo to Hasegawa, can't you?
Oh, honestly, you can play 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You could do 6 degrees of Frog.
Yeah, because quite a lot of Frog kits ended up in the Hasegawa range, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Frog were the official Hasegawa importer for quite. They were they basically bagged kits reboxed.
They were.
Yeah.
I can remember going around my next door neighbour's brother. He was a good bit older than me, but he had a massive collection of Frog kits. I can remember going around and just looking through his Frog kits and stuff like the Super Saber and some of the other stuff, the Delta Dagger and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they were just bagged Hasegawa tools in Frog boxes. Some of the other stuff, the Lightning was a bit more of a. They both had their own version of basically the same tool.
Yeah, they did that with the Harrier, the Lightning, and the Phantom.
Yeah. They were basically they both had their own tools, but they were basically the same design.
That British Harrier was awful, wasn't it?
Oh God! Do you remember the way the intakes went on with the forward nozzle bearings attached to the intakes? Terrible.
But I think the sort of the most I guess the B-47 and also the Neptune were the two largest.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
right.
They were
which
both
way round they were? One was. I think it was the Frog Neptune, wasn't it? That ended up in the Hasegawa box.
No.
It was the other way around. Was it?
That's Hasegawa tooling.
Yeah. So I remember seeing that, but then the B-47 as well.
The
same kit, but people are going to pay really high prices, essentially for the box and the instructions, aren't they? Because the plastic is the same.
And the Frog kits probably had better decals because they were designed by Dick Ward and they were printed in this country by, I think it was Versicolor or Vericolor, whatever they were called at the time, the precursor to Color Slide. But so they were lovely. I remember the reviewers always used to comment in this, and they'd say, this latest release from Frog is good value money, and it also comes with matte transfers.
Yes,
as if that was a big
stickers.
Yeah, but it was matte transfers were a big selling point because
it went on a matte colour.
It went on matte paint. You see, but ironically, I think it was Chris Ellis who commented in it was a one Airfix magazine review where he commented on some kit. I can't remember what it was. Might have been some Eastern European kit back in the mid-70s, and he said something to the effect that the decals are glossy, but they have extraordinary adhesive powers. And it was like,
fabulous. I'm sure that matte transfers are playing the Dublin Castle this weekend.
They probably are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, that was the big thing is matte transfers, and Frog kits were. But then again, you think about the 1980s, is that the Italia and Eschi kits from that had the decals the ones in
when Cartograph was just starting out,
when they came with a varnish covering that was harder than diamond.
Yeah, absolutely. And the adhesive properties of water. Essentially.
Well,
they looked great on the sheet, didn't they?
They were also beautiful. Well, it was Cartograph. Their printing has always been superlative. Yeah, always
terrible. And the Novo decals as well. I remember having. You've got to be watching. They just go.
There was a way. There was a
Yeah,
decal solvent that worked with 80s Eschi and Italeri decals, and that was called Humbrol Liquid Poly.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I remember using nail varnish remover, so acetone basically.
Just strong enough to melt the decal, but it flashed off quickly that it didn't actually start killing the paintwork.
It didn't start making the decal ink run and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, the things we had to do.
We did mention the idea of, I guess for another one now, as it's almost 9 o'clock, the discussing model decal at some point in the future. That was something.
Yeah, we will do. Yeah.
And the reason for that is, and this brings Drew in as well. I've got the sheet for the F111, the EF111.
The EF111, yeah.
And we were discussing that Revell have actually reissued the monogram 72nd scale EF111. So it was sort of a dual conversation about model decal, but also how these kits are kind of coming and going within ranges and that kind of thing.
So I'd like to get hold of the Hasegawa F111 at some point. I've got a few Hasegawa F111s around here because I think it's a beautiful model of one of my favourite aeroplanes. But I've never got hold of the EF111 yet, and it's just another one of those incredibly frustrating things about Hasegawa is that stuff just doesn't. It's just not available. You just can't find it.
How good / bad is the Eshi EF111?
It's got issues with the tail fairing is much too skinny,
right?
And it's built. Put it that it's buildable, but it's there are issues with it. But that's not a bad little model in its own right. That was sort of towards the tail end of Eshi, but it's one that is okay. I've built it a few times. It's an all right model.
Yeah. Now I do believe that the 48 scale monogram F111 had its origins as an Aurora kit.
I thought it was Lindbergh. I think you might be right.
Aurora,
I think you might be right, Aurora. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it definitely wasn't an original.
No.
It was a retool. I thought Lindbergh, but thinking about it, I think you're right. It was Aurora.
And it had serious issues, didn't it? That kit.
Yes, it was a brave attempt, shall we say, to. I mean, in 48 scale, the F111 story is still wide open. The Hobby Boss kit is just a disaster all around. It's the same as their 48 scale Tornado. That's a disaster.
I think I've got in the loft. I've got an Academy F111 with a whole bunch of Australian resin parts to go with it. Wings, jet pipes.
Honestly, it's probably the Academy kit is probably still the best place to start for 48 scale F111. Because they got the nose and windscreen shape largely correct, whereas Hobby Boss just balls it up completely. And if you get the nose of the F111 wrong with all those swooping curves and things like that, it's just going to look awful.
The monogram kit was derived from the Aurora F111B TFX, which I seem to remember. I think Monogram ended up doing to the Aurora kit what Airfix did to their kit, because theirs started off originally as a TFX, and then it was modded into an F111. But that wasn't Monogram tooling. That was actually Aurora. So
I knew it wasn't original Monogram tooling. I was confused over Lindbergh or Aurora.
Am I wrong to think that it looks good with a shortened nose?
Yes. Yeah.
I think it looks good like that.
Yeah, actually, it was due a complete redesign for the actual production F111B was going to have a redesigned nose again, which is slightly longer, but with quite a significantly raised cockpit for over the nose carrier landing, because even with that stumpy nose on it, the view wasn't great for carrier landing. So they actually planned. I think that's in the Naval Fighters book I got on the F111B. Where it's got there's the original F111A, and then it was re-released as an F111E, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
With a separate ejectable
cockpit, which the Revell kit also had. The Revell 72nd scale kit also had.
Cockpit fire, not a good. Yeah, indeed. Yes,
but that said, I'm pretty sure the actual track record of ejections with the F111 capsule was almost universally brilliant. It was a really, really good system that worked really well.
Ian says, did Hasegawa actually ever issue the EF?
No, they definitely did issue the EF111A.
And it was their own tooling?
And it was their own tooling.
Yeah, it was their own tooling.
Yes. And it's come. They've released it in a production variant, and they also released it in a limited edition prototype boxing, which was the overall white one with the lightning flashes and red, white, and blue prototype.
That's the one I remember seeing, the overall white one.
Yeah,
but I think I may have seen it in pictures. I can't remember ever seeing that kit in the flesh.
And that's what I mean. That's the thing. It's it's a mainstream kit. that you just can't find. You know, I tend to snap them up at shows when I see them. In fact, I'm looking at an F111F just over there now as we talk on my stash.
So few of them come out.
It's incredibly frustrating. Hasegawa kind of inhabit the place that Fujimi started inhabiting 20 years ago. They're no longer a player, really.
Yeah, isn't that a glorious bit of box art? That's the Revell kit, 72nd scale Revell kit, and I just think that's lovely. That's really, really nice.
Indeed, very nice.
That really makes me want to build an F111 for some reason, and there you go. Not that kit, certainly.
A conversation for another night, but the F111 is another one of those models I've never built.
No, I've never built one.
I've built many.
Yes, we thought you might.
Yeah, I've built many of them. FB 111As, F111, built a couple of F111Fs, FB 111A, EF 111, a couple of F111Cs. I've built a few F111s. I'll say I feel there's something, because we grew up in this country, and F111s were always about, because we had the Upper Hayford E's, we had the Lake and Heath F's, so they were part of the scene in this, and I kind of still feel quite proprietorial about them. It's like they were our F111s.
Well, it's funny you say that, because one of the things of living 10 miles away from Filton is they were a regular site.
That's where they were
a regular. They're a regular site, but also on summer evenings, if the wind was in the right direction, of just hearing the engine tests at Filton, all you could hear was this echoing across the thing. But I'll tell you a story. We're going to have to go now, because we're just coming up to the 90-minute mark. But I'll tell you a story going back to about 1987, and I remember being when I used to have the workshop down the end of the garden, and I remember hearing something flying over and thinking, well, that definitely sounds not like the usual jets you get flying over. It sounded distinctly different. And then I suddenly just heard the engine die completely. You just hear that like that, and it was like this horrible silence. And then I heard just like bang, a really, really loud bang. I went outside expecting to see an aeroplane falling out of the sky. Instead, what I was treated to was the twin afterburner glow of what was clearly an F111. Now, whether it had an engine flame out and it had to do a sudden mid-air restart, I've no idea. It was the most bizarre experience. But all I can remember to this day, heading out over the Bristol Channel, just this bright, fiery glow of two afterburners on full reheat.
That would have been a really good sight.
Not when there's the possibility of an F111 spiraling out of the sky into your garden. But
I was fortunate enough to see the dump and burn from an Australian one a couple of times.
Yeah,
because in the last few years they visited the UK quite frequently, it seemed. And I saw the dump and burn from the Australian ones a few times, which is spectacular. If you see it in photographs and stuff, but when you actually see the aircraft do it in real life, it's a whole new ball game. Just phenomenal.
Yeah, Rob says my childhood. That is, he lived in Coalpit Heath. He did. Oh, Coalpit Heath, up in Bristol. We'll end tonight with this one. This is from Anthony Bird. He says, many thanks for listening to chat tonight. Having a bad time, Mum Hospital. It's so quiet, and it's great listening to you guys tonight. Well, I hope you don't mind us putting that up, Anthony, because I do think that, especially in these kind of still incredibly fragile and trying times, I think that whatever anybody can do out there, and this is a good thing about everybody who's been doing live videos, Drew, Jen, Ivan, everybody who's been putting these things out, it does provide.
It helps.
A help. It's a help. It really is a help.
I think I can speak for all three of us and say that in the recent last month or two, all three of us have had some kind of mental health issue.
Yeah, putting it mildly. Yeah,
to varying degrees. It's a fact of life. 2020 has got to a lot of people, and it got to me last month. Yeah, and I had a bit of a meltdown, and we've all had to greater or lesser degrees. And if this helps people and gives us something to focus on and gives other people something to take their mind off it, then it's all been worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope you don't mind us reading that out, Anthony. But absolutely, we appreciate that as well. On that note, on that inspiring note, we will leave you to your evening. We will be back on Sunday with the news program. Sorry?
Speak for yourself, I won't.
So, don't make me use this, really. Don't make me upgrade to a gong.
I'll be all night for that.
You'll be doing your own show with Jen at some stage on the Hercules. In fact, you and Spencer will be doing the Sunday night show at some stage, and I'll just be in the background pressing the button. So,
why you said that last week, and all I thought about was the Wizard in the Wizard of Oz. Pulling back the curtains,
which makes Spencer Toto and you the Scarecrow. So, right, everybody, stay safe, stay out of trouble, be good, kind, considerate people, and we'll see you all again on Sunday. And take care from all of us. Good night.